Can anyone remind me what the rules are when you're adding and subtracting with integers? Jesse? Keep the sign of the larger number. That's your number one rule because it goes with everything, right? Good. Elijah?
If they're the same, you add.
Good. If the signs are the same, add. If the signs are different, subtract. As an example, like in number 1, what might you need to change? Poke the cat eyes? You might need to change if you see what?
Negative and a positive.
No. 2 negatives in a row. 2 negatives in a row should become what? 2 positives or 1 positive depending on how you draw it. So again, if you're poking the cat eyes, it's 2 negatives. For me, it just becomes 1 positive. Okay? All right, and then once you're here, are the signs the same or different? So then you would, and you get 2, and you keep the sign of the larger number. So in this case, that would be positive. Good. What's going on in number 2? They're both negative, so the signs are, so you should, and then keep what sign? Larger, so -8. And then what about number 3? Different, so you subtract, and you keep the positive because 9 is positive and it's bigger. Good. True or false? Sum of 2 negative numbers is always negative. True. If you add together 2 negative numbers, it will always be negative. Okay? It's just getting more negative. All right. That's a good lead-in to what we're talking about today, which is multiplication and division. What happens when you multiply and divide with negative numbers? What happens when you multiply and divide with negative numbers? Jesse? Very good. There's no crazy rules about like same signs do one thing, different signs do one thing. You're always just multiplying or dividing. But if there's 2 negative signs, all right, so 2 negative signs become positive. So for example, -5 times -6 becomes what? Positive 30. Good. What if it's -5 times +6? -30. Good. Okay, same works with division. -20 divided by 4 would give you -5. -20 divided by -4 would give you +5. Okay, so 2 negatives are going to cancel out. That's the only rule, really, with multiplication and division. All right, the rest of it is just knowing your multiplication facts or your division facts. Just as a refresher, because maybe it's been a really long summer, how do you do long division if you don't know how to divide something? If you have like 112 divided by 6. Let's say I don't know what it is off the top of my head. What would I do? 6 goes into 11. How many times? Once. Then what? 6 times 1 is subtract, and I get 5. Bring down the 2. How many times does 6 go into 52? 8. 8 times, what's 8 times 6? 48. What does that give me? 4. So there's a couple ways you can do this. What are some ways you can do this from here? Jessica? You could add a decimal. Okay. You could add a decimal and bring zeros down. What are some other ways? There's 2 others I can think of. Zulema? Okay, you can write 4 or 6 as a fractions. Good. Jesse? Yes, you could write remainder. We will not anymore. Never again, ever again, are you going to write the little r, okay? So you're going to either write it as a fraction or a decimal, because little r doesn't really tell me that much. A fraction or a decimal tells me a lot more. What do you guys prefer? Fraction? Okay. How many people prefer decimals? It doesn't matter to me. I think fractions are quicker, but then you have to try to reduce them. So if you don't like reducing fractions, you might not want to. We'll do this both ways. So if I want to write this as a fraction, what fraction is left over? 4 out of 6. Okay, so we've got 18 and 4/6. But 4/6 I can reduce. What goes into both of those? and you get 18 and 2/3. So there's one possibility, okay? Or we can do it as a decimal. And if I do it as a decimal, okay. All right, so if it's 18 here, then Jessica said I would add a decimal and then what? Add a 0. How many times does 6 go into 40? 6 times. What's 6 times 6? Okay. So now I add another 0. How many times will go into 40? What's going to happen here? It's going to repeat. So my answer is 18.6 repeating. How do you know it's going to keep repeating? Yeah, you're getting the same thing every time, right? How long would you need to keep doing this if it didn't repeat? Until it stopped, right? So sometimes it stops really quickly, sometimes it doesn't stop that quickly. So again, decimals, fractions, they both mean the same thing. 18.6 repeating and 18 and 2/3 are exactly the same. So once you're in chapter 2 and you guys are using calculators, depending on what mode you will have it in, it will either do it as decimals or fractions for you. I don't care one way or the other. Both of them mean the same thing to me. I can convert them. You can make that my job, not yours, okay? I will not take R4. Okay? And it is not 0.4. Just because you got a 4 down here, you don't just say point and then whatever that is, okay? You've got to do the division out. So if you don't want to do that, then stick with fractions. Okay? All right. So there's lots of practice today, but once you're done with this, that's it. Okay, there's only one section of practice. So when you finish these, you guys will go to your seats and do your exit ticket, put your socks and markers up, and then if we have time, we'll play multiplication around the world.